All right. So, Veronica, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so happy to be talking with you. Why don't you take a moment, introduce yourself, and share anyone who's watching or listening a bit about your background and your experience?
Sure, and thanks so much for having me here, Vince. My name is Veronica Pejril. Been a Hoosier by choice for almost 30 years, and I've lived here in Greencastle for most of that time. So while I wasn't born here, my roots are planted deep in this city. I'm a parent of twins. Their names are Frank and Joe. They both graduated from Purdue a few years ago. I've worked in education for my whole career, and I've taught at every age level, including when I taught K through 8 music in Northwest Indiana when my kids were young, and my current work in higher ed. My teaching work has included community college classes of students whose primary language wasn't English, and it's also included Princeton classes when I was a graduate student. I passionately believe that education should be able to unlock doorways to an improved quality of life for everyone. And that passion spills over into all the other things I do in the Greencastle community. In everything I do, I ask myself, what good can come from this? How are lives going to be improved? So I'm currently in my first year of service on Greencastle City Council, and that mantra, it drives my work in City Hall, making sure that our city policies do the most good for our residents.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm talking with a bunch of candidates right now, and what I'm asking everyone else is what's inspiring them to run for city council right now. But I want to ask you, what inspired you originally, and what's inspiring you to run for re-election?
I appreciate that I get two questions to answer here, kind of, because when I ran 4 years ago in 2019, my kids had just recently finished with college, and they were on their own, so I had some extra time to give. And I was already plugged into this community in many ways, but the opportunity presented itself to step up and serve on a different level. Our third Ward Councilman, beloved Steve Fields, chose not to run for re-election that year in 2019 because of his health, and I filed to be on the ballot to continue his legacy of community service. We all know what happened a few months later. Less than 3 months after I was sworn into office, we had a trial by fire, and everybody's best laid plans were thrown out the window because we needed to navigate a global pandemic on a local level. And we've accomplished so much in spite of that challenge, but there's also so much more good work to do. So I'm running for re-election this fall so we can continue doing good work and make progress here.
That's awesome. I'm excited to see you running for re-election, and I love all the work you've done so far, especially during navigating through the pandemic, which was not easy for any of us. So thank you for everything you've done already. So I'd love for you to talk more about what you're involved with in the community, outside of this election.
Sure. Thanks for this question. I'm active in a long list of service organizations, both locally and statewide. I'll try to focus just on the local stuff here. I'm serving with our county's Housing Stability Committee, and that group works to improve housing access and quality of life for marginalized and unhoused folks around here. I'm also on the board of directors for Main Street Greencastle. That organization works to elevate our small businesses in our downtown shopping district. I'm a part of 100 Women Who Care of Putnam County, and that's a philanthropic group that helps to kickstart 4 major nonprofit projects every year. Those things can range from funding rapid rehousing for victims of domestic violence to building new walking trails here in Putnam County. Some of my service in the community is motivated by personal loss and family trauma. I lost a sister to overdose 6 years ago, and I'm plugged in with the board of directors for the Putnam County Recovery Coalition. And that organization is very close to my heart. They work to save lives and provide support for family members of loved ones who have substance use disorder. They work to stop the stigma and improve outcomes with Narcan boxes across the county. Another family trauma I experienced, and this was much longer ago, back in 1989, I lost a brother-in-law to a home gun safety accident. So I'm plugged in with our city's Human Relations Board, where we're having conversations about expanding access to free trigger locks. Now, these things are available at the police department for any resident to stop by and pick up, but we're having conversations about expanding that availability to places like the public library and City Hall, just so that people can go to a place where they feel comfortable to secure these items. On top of some of these things, I serve on the executive board for Indiana Youth Group. That's an organization that provides rapid rehousing and other kinds of support for young and at-risk LGBTQ folks across the state. That organization is currently primarily housed in Indianapolis, but we're currently in a 5-year expansion plan with a strategic goal goal of being able to provide support and community within an hour's drive from anywhere in Indiana. So this summer, we actually launched a satellite location just up the road in Crawfordsville. And goodness knows this expansion is sorely needed because IYG has seen demand for services skyrocket over 300% just this year. And that's largely as a consequence of some of the harmful legislation coming out of our Indiana State House. Finally, in terms of things I do in the community, I'm a piano player, so you'll probably see me playing around town with my jazz quartet or at church. Next month, my quartet's going to be playing for Habitat for Humanity fundraiser here in the county. I'm also playing piano most Sundays for my church community. And every day I'm out in the community doing all I can to improve our quality of life here in Greencastle.
That's awesome. Thanks for everything you do. I find it interesting. As long as I've known you, I've never made it to one of your shows. I need to hear you play.
Well, I'll be texting you to make sure that you don't miss out next time.
Please do. It's nothing personal so far. I just haven't made it a priority. I need to.
It's all good. Well, and as a parent with young ones, I understand also that it's a little harder to get out when the music's happening in our community.
It is, but you do enjoy it all the better when you do get out. So let's move a little more into the issues you're seeing in our community and how you hope to address them.
So my three key issues are improved access to housing, especially at the entry level, increasing investments in impactful infrastructure, and moving the needle on community safety here in Greencastle. So when I'm talking about increasing housing availability, I want everybody to know that our city is in a severe housing deficit. We need to continue taking bold action to improve access to good quality and affordable housing in Greencastle. A recent study showed that our community can absorb at least several hundred more housing units to accommodate our current levels of employment. And we've started working outside the box, at least outside our usual mode of working, including providing abatements to incentivize new housing development here in Greencastle. So we're in competition with the donut communities around Indianapolis for housing development. Most of those developers, their home base is closer to those communities. So here in Greencastle, we need to work extra hard to attract those projects to our community. On my second point, as far as infrastructure goes, I'm sure you've seen construction happening all over the city. And while the state's INDOT project on Bloomington Street appears to be at a perpetual standstill, the city's own street and sidewalk and sewer and water projects are moving along at a good clip. We've budgeted a record $830,000 for streets and sidewalks this year, and that's double from last year's budget figure. When I was sitting in the budget committee last summer and we were figuring out how much we've got available that we're able to be fiscally responsible spending for our infrastructure, we came to an accord that we could double that figure, and I'm happy to be part of that decision last summer because we need to catch up on deferred maintenance and we need to keep up with inflation and we need to pour new sidewalks in places that don't have them around our community. Just this year, we're investing nearly $250,000 just in sidewalk projects this year, $250,000 just in sidewalks. I'll continue to advocate for these kinds of investments down the road, no pun. And finally, my third point is that community safety. And a lot of folks have an idea of what that means. For me, community safety is more than the absence of crime. It's about the presence of well-being. Now in 2020, we learned that community health is everybody's responsibility. We learned that the hard way. Now we're still discovering that community safety is also everyone's responsibility. Now, of course, here in Greencastle, we're making sure that our public safety officers are well equipped and that their pay and benefits are on par with our peer communities. But I'm also advocating for a holistic public safety campaign based on radical inclusion. If we fully fund our police, but we're writing policies that make our neighbors feel unwelcome, we're not doing all we can for community safety. And that's why I want to pass a fully inclusive human rights ordinance for Greencastle. It's a giant step forward that the city can take toward promoting holistic community well-being.
That's awesome. I love that you're always pushing the boundaries and taking those bold steps for Greencastle, and I appreciate that. So oftentimes I hear from people that they don't know where to hear or learn what's going on in the city, and that communication can be improved. What are some ways you've been enhancing communication in your role, and what are some ways you see enhancing communication when you're reelected?
Thanks for this. I think it's incumbent on all of us as public servants to enhance the city's own efforts with our own communication efforts as counselors and public servants. I've made a commitment to using my official social media channels as a source of important information for city residents, but I do recognize that not everybody follows that stuff. And I also recognize, yes, my cell phone number is published on the city website for constituent calls and service, but I admit that I can do more. One thing I've got in mind for the coming years is I hope to experiment with an idea that a friend of mine is doing in Wheeling, West Virginia. Every month, she takes her laptop to a different location and sets up sort of a remote office for drop-in conversations. And by changing up the location and varying the time of these office hours so we can get third shifters, first shifters, second shifters, and say stop at a cafe this month, at the library next month, the senior center after that, you're making and creating opportunities to engage with more residents on their terms where they are.
That's awesome. I'm excited to see how that works out.
Thanks.
So what do you believe sets you apart from other candidates who might be running for city council this year?
Well, I've shared with you most of the ways that I'm plugged in and engaged with the Greencastle community. I believe that when it comes down to putting in the effort to listen to diverse and underrepresented voices around our community and advocate for impactful policy that improves their quality of life, I'm working the hardest day in and day out to improve the quality of life for every resident of our city.
Thank you. How do you see Greencastle evolving in the next 5 to 10 years, and what role do you hope to play in that evolution?
I hope to see more young folks get engaged in the work of shaping our community. I hope someday, maybe soon, to pass the baton to those folks. I hope to see less housing insecurity in our community. And I hope to see more of the people who work in Greencastle also choosing to live within the city limits. I hope the voters give me a chance to continue working toward those goals.
Absolutely. I think when we really focus on expanding affordable housing, then we can have those people living and working here. And I'm excited to see that growth and what Greencastle looks like when we can do that.
It's all part of the mission.
Absolutely. So in what ways have you collaborated with local businesses to support community growth?
Oh, I can think of a number of ways that we're doing that, both personally and as a city. My district includes most of the industrial area on the east side of Greencastle. Now, these businesses bring millions of dollars and hundreds of jobs. It brings all this activity to our city, and that helps support city services, and it reduces our residents' tax burden. When these businesses demonstrate that they're doing good job creation and economic activity in the community, I work closely with Kristen Clary, with the Putnam County Development Center, to ensure that the city incentivizes continued growth through abatements. Other things that I'm plugged into, the Main Street Greencastle board that I spoke of, that I serve with a bit ago, that's collaborating with the city to provide matching grant dollars to downtown businesses who are seeking to fix up their store facades. And in fact, we just received our first grant application this week. So we're getting that off the ground right now. Something else that's just getting off the ground right now is that the city is collaborating with our local college using a $250,000 planning grant from the Lilly Endowment. They've got this thing called the College and Community Collaboration Initiative. Through that planning grant, the city and the college plan to collaborate to continue or to write a grant proposal where we could receive up to $25 million to continue developing the corridor between downtown and the college. And one thing that makes me feel really good about that project is that both parties in this partnership, both the city and the college, are in agreement that creating new affordable housing is our top priority. And finally, sometimes I'm just plugged in with our small business owners here in the community, working to uplift their successes and help to open doors when I can. Just earlier this week, I dropped by one of our local businesses and spoke with the owner there. She provides after-school community in her store for marginalized youth, and I was sharing with her details of a new business preservation grant that seems tailor-made for her store and the services that she does for young folks in our community. So I'm looking forward to following up on that conversation and making sure that that application goes in and that I can support it as best I can.
That's awesome. I was at the last city council meeting where I heard DePaul give an update about the plan that they're partnering with the city on, and it excites me so much, having been here during the Stellar Community Grant and seeing the impact that made. Just to think of the impact that this Lilly grant could be even larger than Stellar, and that really excites me.
It could be, and definitely overlaps into an area that sorely would be a wonderful location for new housing units in our community.
Absolutely. So speaking of education, how do you plan to support education on all levels and other vital community resources here in Greencastle?
So a little backstory about myself and my family, the family I grew up with. My mom was a career public school math teacher, and my dad was a career municipal water engineer. So when you talk about vital community resources and supporting education, I was raised in a home that valued these things, and I can't think of anything more important to a vibrant community than quality education and safe drinking water. Now, I'm a passionate advocate for fully funding public schools with public dollars, but that's a challenge that needs to be resolved in our state house and not city hall. That said, our city council does have the school board appointment, and I'm proud of the work that we've done to ensure that our appointment is fair and values driven. And you've probably seen news about some other Indiana communities that get fractured by partisan school board fights that just hold back progress in schools. I'm confident that we can provide and continue supporting a public school system that ensures the best outcomes for our young people. Moving along and thinking about some of the other important community resources that the city supports, our precious water supply is such a treasure. I'm proud of the work that our city does to provide great quality drinking water. You and I both know that a few short months ago there was some concern across the county about the safety of our water tables around the county, and have been part of the conversations of ensuring that continues to stay so. The last several years of water quality reports, just for the community's knowledge here, they're posted on the city website, and they've been consistently good. And finally, I'll bring it up here, you've probably seen some news about the potential creation of a stormwater utility for Greencastle. Now, it's important for folks to know that the city has been building storm sewers for many years. In fact, we've got storm sewers that we're replacing in the next year that are over 100 years old. But with the creation of a dedicated utility, the city stands to gain and become eligible for significant grant funding that can help improve the quality of life for folks living in these places that regularly get soggy across the city of Greencastle. These grant dollars will help us do more good in the community with less burden on the residents in the long run.
Absolutely. It was interesting to hear the conversation at City Council while you all were deciding on where to start the conversation. And I know it's a tough decision, but I appreciate the work you're all putting in on that right now.
Thanks. Sometimes we need to do the right thing, even if it's not always politically expedient.
Absolutely. And, kind of to that point, right? It's something that needs to be done. You're going to be speaking with your constituents. A diverse group expects you to represent them. Can you talk about an example of a time that you've communicated with diverse groups in the community?
What a great question. Since I came to Greencastle almost 20 years ago, I've developed a habit of intentionally placing myself into unfamiliar places through volunteerism. Being in those spaces, I meet new people with fresh ideas, and we're all better for it. Now, here's some examples. I've volunteered to help prepare Thanksgiving dinner at a church that I don't attend. It's an ecumenical effort, multiple churches getting together, and so I met so many new people. I volunteered at the registration table for a 5K race that I wasn't running it. Even though my children are totally grown up, I volunteered to reshelve books in the children's section of the public library. And so at every one of these places, I've had great conversations about our shared Hoosier values with people I'd never met before, and I might not have met had I not been in those unfamiliar spaces.
Absolutely. I have a similar belief of putting yourself in unfamiliar spaces and being available to listen. I've learned so much from people who I didn't know I could learn from, or I was hesitant to meet. So I love seeing you do that as well.
It helps us grow as neighbors.
Absolutely. And I know Russell and I talked about that as well. And it's just important. It's important. I don't think you can represent a community or members of a community without taking that time to get to know their perspective. So thank you for that. Well, as we wrap up, what message would you like to convey to voters about you, your commitment, the issues are important to you? This is your time to get it all out and let the voters know what you're about.
Well, I've said so much already. So I guess I'll just say that I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today and to talk about our common values, describe how I've lived out those values in the service that I do across the community. If you trust me with continuing to do this important work, I would be honored to have your vote this November. Now, if you want to learn more about this work, please visit Pejril.com. It's been great having this conversation with you, Vince. I know that together we can continue to do more good for Greencastle.
Thank you so much. And we're going to move Greencastle forward.
Indeed, we will. Thanks so much, Vince.
Thank you.